What's up guys, Z-House, and today we're going to be taking a look at the ESS Influx AVS goggles. Now these goggles are the goggles that I've been wearing the most recently for my airsoft and milsim adventures. I wore these to Op Gladio, I wore these to Milsim West the Caspian Gap, and I wore these to American Milsim's Faded Giant 5, and I've worn them several times at local events and open plays. So I've been using these pretty consistently for the last like 2 or 3 months. So I've definitely got a pretty good basis on which I can give these a review, so that's what we're doing today. So to start off, these are expensive goggles. These retail for about $100 to $120. Yeah, ESS is kind of top tier for their eye protection, and their pricing is top tier as well. I mean, the quality is there, and we'll talk about why that is in a minute, but to start off, if you're looking for a budget pair of goggles, these aren't them. But they have some unique features that, in my opinion, make them worth it, and a few problems that, in my opinion, make it a little hard to swallow the price tag. But let's get into those. To start off, what are the unique features of these goggles? Because on the surface, they look just like any other, Revision Desert Locust, Smith Outside the Wire, or ESS profile type goggle. What do these do differently that makes them unique? Well, the AVS in the AVS Influx name stands for Active Ventilation System. So with these goggles, there are 2 ways to use them. And the first is the fully dust sealed mode, where you have this lens flush with the frame, or there is the AVS ventilated mode, where you take this little tab here, you pull that, and the lens pops a little away from the frame to give you a few millimeters of airflow along the whole top of the lens. Now, that's not enough to let any decently sized particulate in. I mean, anything over the size of a piece of fine gravel isn't going to get in there, but it is no longer sealed against dust, but it does let you have all that more ventilation, because in addition to the ventilation you have on the sides with the foam, now you're also going to have that ventilation in the lens itself with that whole top half being so open. So I'm sure that sounds like a very fancy way of saying basically the lenses hinge out just a little bit, which is pretty much what it is. It is a very fancy way of saying the lens hinges out and allows more air and more airflow. But it works. It's stupid simple, and I kind of wish I'd come up with it, but it works, because having that much airflow in combination with a decent anti-fog, which I always use with every one of my goggles ever, except the dye mask, interestingly, I've never had to with those. But with the ESS's, once I use a little bit of cat crap or those Revision anti-fog wipes, and I combine that with this amount of airflow, I have no problems whatsoever with fogging unless I get into a very, dark, moist, still air room. Then I might start getting a little bit of fogging showing up. But the second I start moving, or the second I go into a room that has windows, nothing. So that's the one scenario where these goggles can fog up a bit, is once that airflow stops being an advantage because there is no airflow in the room, then you can have a little bit of fogging occur. But if there's even the slightest bit of air movement, generally speaking, I've had no fogging issues with these. And people who are less sweaty than I am might have even better luck. And the reason that works is because in addition to that gap along the top, you also have all of this ventilation on the top. So you have a lot of room for air to move through these. And the idea is essentially that what these lack in having, they don't have dual thermal lenses, which is kind of unfortunate. Apparently ESS has gotten away from using those for some reason. But they don't have dual thermal lenses, but the idea is that they make up for that by just having so much airflow. And even through the nose, you can see there's some ventilation on the bottom there by the nose. So you get that air moving up from the nose area through to the eyebrow area, and it's just constantly purging the sweaty, moist air that wants to be trapped in between your eye and these lenses, and it lets you prevent fogging. So that works pretty darn well, and that's definitely the strength of this goggle, is the AVS works really well. Now, aside from the AVS, what are some other things about these goggles? Well, first of all, they work great with a helmet. They line up really well with my Team Wendy X-Fill. I have no complaints whatsoever. They also have a nice strap, the elasticity, the quality and build of the goggles is what you would expect from ESS. I mean, they're $120 goggles. I would certainly hope they're put together nice and they mesh well and they're durable. So everything you would expect from that price point is definitely in play here. The foam on the goggles is definitely comfortable enough for prolonged wear. I wore these the entire time at Milsim West because when you're in the field, you can't take your eye protection off, ever. And I was pretty strict about that. Even when I would take my helmet off to sleep, I would hold these against my face and make sure that I was keeping them on my face. And after 40 hours of wearing them, I did have some irritation, especially right on the soft areas of my cheekbones and whatnot. But they're not bad. They're not going to cut into your face. They're not going to be super uncomfortable. You're not really going to feel that you're wearing them for that entire time. These aren't the types of goggles that constantly remind you that you have them on. So now you can see I have the goggles on my face, and as I've mentioned in previous videos, and as you've seen me in comparison to other people, I got a big old head and a big face. So this is how the goggles look on me. They're not exactly low profile. I mean, when I go to shoulder my rifle and get a good cheek weld, the bottom half of the goggle, like this bottom lip, can hit the stock every now and then. It doesn't get in my way, and it's only when I really bear down on it, but that's definitely something to keep in mind, is that these are not your Oakley M frames or your Falcon Zulus or your Pyramex goggles or whatever you prefer to use. These are big, overt profile goggles. They work really well, like I said, at protecting a wide variety of, working with a wide variety of systems, and they certainly protect your eyeballs. And you have a really wide field of view, but what you sacrifice there is you do have this big old thing on your face. So if you're working with these with a ball cap or with a boonie hat, for some people that might be a little tricky or a little awkward. I find that these work pretty darn well for my uses in general, but they are high profile. That's also why the ventilation works so well with them, because you do have so much airspace and so much ventilation that you can keep the fogging to a minimum. And actually you can see from just having them on my face for a little bit, if you run these really tight, the foam is not super soft, so those can dig into your face. I actually tightened this headband just a little bit too much, so now you can see all around my eyes the raccoon eyes look. So you might want to run these almost air on the side of loose if you're using these, because that foam is not soft. It's just pretty much to prevent skin irritation. But you can totally get that line of compression if you're running these tight. So to kind of summarize the pros and cons of these goggles, I mean, the pros are they do a really good job preventing fogging. These, I've used a lot of goggles. I've gone through so many goggle systems, even in the last 3 years, trying to find something that doesn't fog. These are as close as I've come to something that really doesn't fog while not being a dye mask, because dye masks are black magic or something. I've just never gotten mine to fog. But these work really well at preventing fog because they've just got so much ventilation. So the pros are really high quality goggle that does not fog as much as I've been able to get something to not fog short of a dye mask. Cons. That foam is pretty thin. So if you run these a little looser and you're okay with, having a little bit of raccoon eyes at the end of the day, that's not a problem. But this foam is, like I said, it's just thin. So they're not super comfortable on your face. They're not again, I'm gonna compare it to the dye mask, which feels like a cushion on your face. But that also means that this foam doesn't retain sweat the way a lot of those other masks do. So pros and cons there. Another con that I've actually seen is ESS usually carries prescription lens inserts, and they usually carry extra lenses for their goggles. I can't find those for these. The AVS Influx goggles are kind of not really that supported by ESS on the aftermarket, it looks like, and even finding these in stock anywhere is kind of a pain. So it's kind of weird. It's almost like these just kind of came out and then they popped out a few of them, and now you can't really find many of them. There's only a few websites that have a couple in stock. I mean, on Amazon, I just looking up some stats for the review. they only really had one pair in stock. So I don't know what the deal is with that. And you can't find extra lenses in stock anywhere. Maybe if you email ESS, if you ever need a replacement lens for these, you could get one. But that doesn't exactly inspire confidence that you can't just go out and buy a new lens like you can with the Profiles or the Revision Desert Locus or a dye mask or a set of Oakley M frames. It's kind of weird that they don't really push that support for these the same way they have for a lot of their other goggle systems, because in my opinion, these are better. Another con too, going along with the prescription lens insert thing that I just mentioned, these may or may not work with glasses. With my glasses, my lenses are a little too big. Well, my frames really are a little too big to go in there, so I can kind of force them if I really want to, but that's what it looks like. So you think that's going around my head? No way. So I can kind of force the lens in there, but these don't work well with like medium to large frame glasses. Maybe if you had some really small frame glasses, you could squeeze them in there, but they clearly tried to keep these somewhat low profile. And as a result, glasses may or may not work. You would have to check with your pair of glasses if they would fit. But if you can't wear contacts or if you can't go without glasses and you really need either prescription lens inserts or goggles that work really well with glasses, these may not be your best bet. However, that all said, and of course the price point is $120, for $120, do I like these goggles? Do I regret buying them? Not at all. These goggles are, like I said, super high quality and super well built, and I haven't been able to get them to fog that much. However, there are some problems with them, mostly because of ESS's apparent lack of aftermarket support. It's kind of weird. Also, the other problem is just personal stuff, whether or not there are things that these do that you would like. They're a little higher profile. I don't mind that because I get so much ventilation and they're still comfortable to wear. But I also think they're comfortable to wear because I'm willing to run them a little looser and deal with, looking like raccoon eyes at the end of the day just from the compression, because I don't mind that the foam is thinner. So there's some give and take with these goggles. Would they be your ultimate choice? If you have a lot of trouble with fogging from a lot of other goggle systems and you don't necessarily want to deal with a fan, because that's why I chose these, because I don't really love fans. I don't love having to deal with batteries. These are, short of a fan goggle system, the best I have found. However, if you have other goggle systems already that don't fog and are lower profile and do other things you like better, I wouldn't necessarily rush out to replace them with these. But if you're desperate for no fog, if you like the idea of having that much ventilation, as I do, clearly, because I bought them, then these are totally worth it. But be aware of what you're getting into before you make that purchase. So anyways, those are my thoughts on the ESS AVS Influx goggles. Hopefully you found them helpful. Hopefully I gave you some information that you really can't find many places on the internet. There's only like 1 or 2 video reviews on these, and they're not really that in-depth because I don't think a couple of the guys actually used them yet. But hopefully this helps. Anyways, the Z House from Gun Gamers, signing off.